Once called weak, he is now a monster. Maybe monsters deserve to survive in this cursed world, where weakness means death and strength is the only truth. Looking at the fallen enemy, he said coldly that this was the same weakling everyone had scorned. Even the weakest can become the one who defies the rules. The gift-giving festival took place at the local church. Kai Heinemann and Reno Graf stood at the doorway, hearts trembling as they waited their turn. Their faces were full of hope and expectation. Reno, eyes shining, said she had the same dream. The two young men talked excitedly about gifts that could change their future forever. The hero's heart pounded with joy. The long-awaited day had come, the day he would receive his gift as a divine blue, and his soul was full of excitement and hope. The gift is a special ability every child receives at 13 as a blessing from the gods, and that moment marks the start of true adulthood. Gifts come in many forms. Some master the sword or spear, others practice magic, and some can turn everyday things into jewels. Most importantly, a gift shapes your fate and future. The hero lied when he said he dreamed of a sword-related gift. In his dreams, he pretended to want what everyone else wanted, but deep down, he wanted something completely different. Receiving the sword was the last thing he wanted. It was his grandfather's wish. The sword sage had dreamed of passing the Heinemann art to his grandson, but that dream was not his. He dreamed of a gift that would make him a perfect hunter like his mother, his true calling that lit a fire in his heart. Hunters roam enchanted lands, explore ruins, and fight monsters, and that was the path the hero wanted, a life full of adventure and freedom. Even if he received the sword, he would not have the talent for it. He knew he lacked the skill to truly master that path, so it would be a burden, not his strength. His memory is average, and he is not regarded as strong among his peers. A friend pulled him out of his thoughts by joking that she might get the gift of turning into a cat. A sudden commotion broke out at the altar. Something unusual began to happen, and everyone in the church immediately turned their attention to its source. Layla Helena ran toward them, calling happily. The hero noticed she had finished earlier. Reno asked why she was so happy, and Layla proudly admitted she had received the gift of a swordsman of the highest rank. No one was surprised. The only girl in town who could match the Heinemann family's sword skill was also the hero's fiancée. Everyone was stunned. He approached Layla to share his news, but she cut him off because she had already seen everything herself. Stepping closer, he confirmed it was her, said he belonged to the sacred knights of magic, and asked if she had a few minutes to talk about her gift. Layla visibly grew nervous. Her gift did not seem as rare as Roman's, but the knight replied that it was because she was the heir of House Helena. Great heights are not reached in a day. It was the result of daily training and did not impose anything. The knight's words stunned the hero. His fiancée truly had incredible luck. Roman asked her to follow him, and the girl, though hesitant, stepped forward. Kiach approached the hero and apologized for his cousin, saying he had simply become embarrassed, and his words sounded sincere, but tension still lingered in the air after the recent events. The main character waved his hand, showing it was all right. He understood everything and held no grudge. There was no hurt in his voice, only calm confidence and quiet acceptance. He even urged them not to fall behind and to keep moving forward. At that moment, Kai called out to Reno, breaking the brief silence between them. The girl who received the gift of the sacred sword could not find words at first, struck silent by the power that suddenly came over her. Knights near her began to whisper. One listed the gifts in surprise, naming Lord of the Spear, Master of Magic, and now the Sacred Sword. Another agreed that this year had been wild. So many high-level gifts were a sign the demonic threat was growing. Meanwhile, the hero watched everyone in silence and thought bitterly that his gift was the weakest in the world. Even that no longer surprised anyone. A fight between Roman and the hero erupted in front of the crowd. Roman accused him of being weak and useless, but the other man said nothing. Someone in the crowd shouted that he was not weak in everything, only in this. The cousin laughed and brazenly challenged Kai to a fight. The atmosphere grew even tenser. Carol stepped up to the hero and helped him to his feet, her voice sympathetic as she said, the blow had hit him square in the forehead, and it had to hurt, but she stayed by his side. He was used to getting hit, and pain became part of his life. So familiar, he sometimes didn't even notice it. His gift was powerlessness. Strength slipped away like sand through his fingers. No matter how much he trained, his muscles grew weaker. He lagged behind girls and even children. Friends turned away. Beatings, blood, and broken bones became routine. When there were only bruises, it was called luck. Strangers laughed and pointed at him. Only a few people in the city of Ramor still treated him like a person. His fiancée was one of them. He had lost not only his strength, but also his status as heir to the Heinemans. That day ended his engagement to Layla. Now he is nobody, not an heir to the art of the sword, not a fiancé, just an ordinary boy with a gift that takes everything. She was still worried, but he reassured her that he was fine. There was no need to worry. His gaze was calm, but deep inside, loneliness smoldered. Answering yes was hard, but he kept himself together, his heart tight as he remained proud and dignified. Layla decided to support a friend. Confident he would find a job, she was surprised when he admitted that despite his mother's advice to work, he had completely different plans. In the capital stands the Wobble Magic Academy. Even people without a gift study there. It has misfits like him. Maybe he can start fresh there. Sad about having to part, she promised to write letters if that would calm him even a little, and wanted him not to feel lonely. He was grateful for her care. Her support warmed him. It was time to say goodbye. She packed her things, said a warm farewell, and left a pleasant memory. The hero was also supposed to go to his grandfather when Roman's voice stopped him and said simply, "You're out." Those words carried more than a simple judgment. In fact, Roman was the one who received the King of Spears' gift, and even his engagement to Layla had already faded. Everything that once bound them was in the past, like dust in the wind. It was logical. Roman also belonged to the Heinemann family, and unlike the hero, came from the main branch, so he had every right to be with her, and everyone saw it as the natural outcome. Kai replied calmly that he and his cousin felt completely different about Layla. For him, it was not a fight over a girl, but something much deeper: memories, trust, and family bonds. He thought Roman worried needlessly, and Roman was already getting upset when the mentor's voice cut in and called them back to work. The cousin said it was pointless to waste time on a lazy man. As he walked away, he warned him to stay away from Layla or he would regret it. The hero only sighed inwardly. He had never loved her, and she felt like a sister. The grandfather looked carefully at his grandson and sighed. The boy looked badly beaten. He apologized, his voice quiet and sincere, as if something was weighing on him. Kai raised an eyebrow in surprise. Nothing made sense to him. An apology like that did not fit the stern old man he had known all his life. The old man finally said the engagement to Layla was cancelled, and he now had to make his grandson leave the house. The words cut like a blade, but were spoken without hatred. The hero just shrugged. It didn't bother him. He had accepted it long ago, and none of it mattered anymore. He explained that from the start there had been only a brotherly bond between him and Lila. His dream was not to have a family or to inherit the sword, but to go to the capital or to wobble. He was not upset at all. The grandfather looked at his grandson with gentle sadness and said he was probably just getting old. His voice sounded tired, but not disappointed. He admitted that sometimes it seemed there was something mysterious in Kay's eyes, yet those eyes were clear and free of malice or any hint of anger. With those eyes, the old man said, he had no reason to worry. Let him go to the capital and do whatever he thinks necessary. Kai was taken aback by such ease, but thanked him sincerely. He suddenly realized his real dream was not to own a sword, but to travel to Wobble, and the old man had apparently realized that before he did. The old man said firmly that it doesn't matter what your gift is. That doesn't define who you are. What matters is that you are my family, and you always will be. He added, the doors of this house will always be open, and even if he is not the heir, he is a son of the family, and this is his home. The hero wanted to object, saying he no longer belonged here and that it was all behind him, but he held back. The old man raised his voice. He has to return, even if only someday. This is where he grew up and where his roots are, and nothing can change that, not by gifts or defeats. It seemed the grandson wasn't listening, but he suddenly spoke up, saying he understood and would do as his grandfather said. His words were short but sincere. The old man simply nodded. The conversation was over. Take care of yourself, he said. And those words were not a harsh goodbye, but the gentle care of a loving heart. At last, a light appears on the horizon, and his time has come. He sets out for Wobble, the hunter's capital. Ahead may lie the fate of a true hunter, the one he has always dreamed of becoming. Driven by a dream, he told himself there would be no more doubts. He will become who he wants to be, and having chosen his own path, he will no longer let anyone dictate his fate. Arriving in the capital, he immediately looked for a carriage stand, taking in streets where every corner breathed grandeur and sweep. Just then, a luxurious carriage pulled up before him. The boy froze in surprise. Only the elite rode in such a carriage. His eyes widened. It was not for ordinary people. The hero was shocked. The crew girl's name matched the kingdom's Saint Amelia. She might be the saint. The resemblance was striking. Then the girl stepped forward and hissed in his face, saying a weakling like him had no right to be so careless. Beside her stood a winged lion wearing glasses. It declared they had found gates for the army. Rose cut her off, calling her Anna, and said that Anna willingly accompanies the hero, but by her actions shames both herself and her grandfather, a holy swordsman. Another maid tried to explain that Anna only wanted to protect her. Rose erupted so violently that even the main character felt unnerved. Her anger was real. The crew was already waiting for him, and Kai felt confused, thinking that maybe all aristocrats were like that. But his feelings stayed mixed, because he still did not know what to expect. They set a tray of meager food before him, and said it was the Lord's order. Frankton. Startled, Kai remembered that his grandfather had once mentioned the name and tried to recall what it was connected to. About to protest, he was cut off by an attendant who sharply scolded the weakling for pushing, and when the hero tried to reply, he was met with more contempt. The man shoved him again and sneered, "Weakling." People nearby started whispering. One said, "Here we go again." Another muttered, "Better to ignore it." Meanwhile, the hero thought bitterly that if he had been injured, they would still be laughing even then. Someone asked the girl why she was defending the weak. She replied calmly that she was protecting no one and that it was Mrs. Rose's order to take him in as a guest. Anna said that even then, without the lady's order, she would not have defended him. Her words sounded cold as ice. Suddenly, one of the men stepped up to the hero and apologized. Kai, surprised, recognized him as Arnold, a familiar face from the past. The young man admitted that the servant's rudeness was his responsibility and again sincerely asked Kai for forgiveness for the hurt and unfairness he had caused. Sighing, the hero had no choice, because he had already grown used to that attitude. He could only endure and move forward. Arnold gave him an encouraging wink and invited him to his tent, where real food waited for him instead of the dry leftovers on the tray. The main character muttered in embarrassment that this was too much, but the young man only laughed. Children should speak honestly, he said, and beckoned him to follow, giving him no time to hesitate. Arnold stood up and slammed his fist on the counter, a sharp move that felt less like aggression and more like a demand to the cooks. When the food arrived, Arnold shot an indignant look at the plates. It was nothing like what he had ordered. His eyes flared as anger rose in waves. "This is not enough. Add more," he barked. The hero thanked him, confused, and the man waved his hand and said not to thank him because it was only what was right. He has every right to help, joking that it was just a formality. His slight smile eased the tension a little. "You're still a child. Eat well and grow," Arnold ordered, pointing at the table. His voice held genuine care and quiet support. He then said they needed to talk. The hero should not worry about the bully. Everything is already settled. From then on, he was given more food than the others. It became a habit. Most important, the taunting and beatings stopped. The hero realized it was all thanks to Arnold. Time passed, and everything changed. No one bullied, shoved, or humiliated him anymore. He respected Arnold because Arnold did not shout, but took action. Meanwhile, the girl with the gift of the sacred sword and Kiach, gifted as a great mage, chose their paths. She joined a demon-hunting squad, and he went to the capital to study. One evening, someone knocked on the tent. A familiar voice asked to be let in. It was Rose. The hero was surprised to see her. Entering, she smiled and said she had decided to go to the capital with him. Her eyes shone with confidence. A sudden thought crossed his mind that she had heard about him from friends, and he could not keep it to himself, so he asked her directly. The girl confirmed, adding that Reno only talks about him. Her words were simple, but they made his chest ache. She laughed and said she knew more about him than even the teacher. The hero blushed, because now she definitely knew all his silly stories. Rose said she had only wanted to meet the man who had been so close to her friends. He asked how Reno was doing and whether he was managing in the squad. Rose replied eagerly that of course, and with such an open heart, the night guards took to her at once. The hero felt hurt by those words, but showed no reaction. The maid reminded the lady it was time to rest. The room fell quiet, and Rose nodded slightly in agreement. At that moment, Kai thought of Anna. She made him a little uneasy, but exhaustion took over, and he urgently needed to sleep. His eyes were already closing. A young man suddenly appeared, slightly startling the hero. He apologized for his sudden arrival and seemed sincere. Seeing the hero's surprise, the boy said he was grateful the hero had talked to Rose after that incident, and they had a sincere talk that made him happy. The hero answered awkwardly that he didn't need any more thanks. He was actually the grateful one for being spoken to honestly as an equal, even though they thought of him as a failure. The conversation touched his heart. Arnold admitted that although he was not like the hero, he had a gift he did not consider good, so he knows well what it is to feel unworthy among others. He added that he trusted only him with this and urged him to be strong. All the work would be rewarded. The hero nodded gratefully, understood everything, and felt hope again. Everything was going perfectly. The Empire's elite squad was at full battle readiness. Even the siege by the Black Panthers and the ogres no longer frightened anyone, since the Lord himself stood nearby. No rat soul would slip through. As expected, the detachment led by Lord Enns arrived. Lord Enns told the captain he had heard many rumors, but did not tolerate idle talk. He asked directly what was wrong with the princess. Everyone's faces tightened. The topic was sensitive, even dangerous. Everything seemed staged to separate the princess and the knight's captain. Worry showed in their eyes. Under the plan, if the girl disappears from the stage, Prince Gilbert will be the next claimant to the throne, the candidate backed by the Lord. One man objected, saying it was simpler. They just wanted to marry her off. The Lord smiled darkly and said she would be a plaything for life. Anna stepped in and called for a truce, and the Lords apologized because everyone was on edge and quarrels on foreign soil could be fatal. Freinton was about to leave. He politely said goodbye to his allies, leaving a cold tension and a hint of something more. Enns looked at both and said firmly that he counted on each of them. His voice allowed no objections, and the alliance had to be strong. Meanwhile, the prince's supporters rubbed their hands. The time had come. Finally, they had a chance to get rid of the princess for good. Alongside them stood the Glitania Empire's strongest fighting force and 2 of its 6 commanders. They were certain victory would be theirs. They knew they would not be defeated. The irritable princess would never become queen. If she stayed in power, the aristocratic order could be undermined. This is for a great cause, one of them kept telling himself. That was the Freinton family's truth, and he was ready to see it through. The plan had to happen far from prying eyes. This was their stage, a place where everything would unfold without witnesses. Suddenly, an unfamiliar young man appeared before him, and the attacker wondered who he was and where he had come from, the questions flashing through his mind. Even the hero was surprised and asked if the man lived here. The young man seemed too calm, as if he really belonged here. The stranger replied oddly that his presence here was an accident, and meeting Kai was unlikely to derail his plans. On the contrary, "This will be fun," the boy said with a sinister smile. In that instant, the hero knew he had to run. Immediately, an unknown man unleashed this horror and sent his demons after the boy for no reason, and he now intends to kill him even though the boy did nothing. Suddenly he realized he couldn't breathe. Pain crushed his chest. His head felt like it was splitting. Everything blurred before his eyes, and panic rolled over him like an avalanche. At the most crucial moment, his gift proved so slow. He pleaded for at least one chance. Even now, a distant rumble could already be heard. The monster's heavy steps were closing in fast. If they catch him, it will be the end. It cannot be happening. He cannot die here for no reason. He could have stayed in Ramor, become heir to the art of the sword, married Layla, and lived a simple life with Reno and Kitch. Peace and stability were within reach. Now dying in a remote forest, he faces monsters. It would have been better never to have gotten the gift. Then a waterfall appeared before him, his last chance to get away. Clenching his fists, he decided he would not die here. Not here, not like this. Without fear, he plunged into the waterfall. Passing through a wall of water, he found himself in a strange, deserted place. Everything around him looked unreal. Looking around, he tried to figure out where he was. Moments earlier, he had been in the forest. Now, he was somewhere else. It seemed impossible. The entrance was gone. It was nowhere to be found. He laughed nervously, as if trapped, but could not make sense of anything. Bright beams filled the space as a system window appeared before him, showing activation of access for holders of the divine rank gift and an attempt to register a player, Kai Heinemann. The hero could not believe his eyes. The gift everyone had called the weakest in the world was divine. It had to be a mistake. This could not be real. He pressed the button, and rules appeared. First, you can leave this place only after finishing the game. Second, registered players do not age because time here is stopped. Third, each player gets an item chest, an identification skill, speed boots, and an unbreakable staff. Fourth, the chest can hold at most 20 potions. Monsters again. The hero clutched his head, unable to tell if it was real. If it was, everything felt pointless. He forced himself to calm down and think rationally. One of the items was a chest. If it was real, it could be a chance. He pressed get, and speed boots appeared from it. His heart fluttered with hope. The hero was thrilled. Everything turned out to be real. The chest was a true treasure. In his hands, he held something others could only dream of. The appraisal skill came too. Using it, the hero realized the boots greatly improved his chances of escaping the enemy. That was exactly what he needed. However, there is a catch. If he starts the fight on his own, the boots effect disappears, but their rank remains excellent. Kai was shocked. For the first time, he discovered he could escape quickly. This could be a real advantage. So he decided to test his body and succeeded. The screen showed his details. First name, last name, age 15, health 3, mana 5, skill gift. The profile said he had the lowest potential but a divine rank gift that could develop under certain conditions. Kai fell into thought. Under certain conditions seemed to mean the gift could reward effort or grow with each step. It was hard to understand, but the idea gave him hope. Not fully understanding the gift, he decided not to expect much from it yet and moved on to the next item, an elixir, where his gaze stopped. A stream of water was flowing from the wall into a vessel, and he knew at once. This was the source of the elixir itself. He had expected a bottle, not a continuous flow, and he could not see how that could be possible or how the source could be endless. Not wasting time, he decided to test it. He cut his hand and dropped a few drops of the liquid onto the wound. And then the wound on his arm vanished instantly, as if it had never been there. It all happened so fast, it was hard to believe. And the elixir really worked. Only now, the hero realized how lucky he was. Once called the weakest in the world, he received a chest of items, the appraisal skill, and found a source of eternal healing. Without delay, he carefully filled the chest with the elixir. Grabbing a knife and a stick that could serve as a weapon, he was ready to move on. It was cool and quiet here. He needed to calm down and just walk along the wall, as the old book said. Everything was fine. These were the adventures he had dreamed of. A monster suddenly appeared, and something warm ran down his hand. It was blood, his own. Panic returned. Fear paralyzed him. He tore his hand from the monster's jaws, howling in a voice full of pain and terror. A moment ago, he was talking to Rose and stepping out of the tent, and now a man with bright red hair suddenly lunged at him. Yes, he recalled everything. That was exactly how it happened. It came suddenly, but remained clear in his memory. His joy over the elixir's source and the skill's effect vanished when he remembered that terrible monster had torn off his arm. In a panic, he shoved her into the spring with no plan and acting instinctively, simply trying to save something. Tension slowly eased. He fell to the ground and suddenly laughed. His arm was still there, alive. He was saved. He had made it. Kay looked at himself, his body covered in blood and his clothes torn. Unfortunately, even the elixir does not restore tissue. Those are small matters. The main thing is he is alive. One day, he will have to go back down into the dungeon. This time, he was lucky, but no one knows what might happen next. Again, he wondered if he had the strength to beat this unforgiving game. and whether he had chosen to play or the game had chosen him. The hero no longer thought in fear but in despair, facing not death but loneliness, hunger, and slow forgetting. Day 7 of his solitude. Around him were only beetles and empty stone pillars. No living soul, no way out. Starving, his stomach clenched with pain. There was no food here. His gaze landed on the beetles. The idea was disgusting, but he had no choice. He knew he needed nutrients, but the beetles were so poisonous they could kill a dragon, and he did not want to die of hunger. He still did not dare. His hand trembled, and he threw the beetle away. For now, his will overcame despair. On the 15th day, he realized that one elixir was not enough. His body weakened. Despite everything, he tried again. Darkness closed in, noise filled his head, and he thought it was the end. This was his last breath. He did not die. A voice spoke in his head. It was clearly not his voice. It was something bigger, something outside him. A voice said a skill was acquired. Condition: survive after eating a poisonous creature. Rank: low. To rank up: survive poison from 100 creatures with a dose of 1,000 units. He realized it was a real skill, and the elixir proved useful, saving him from death and opening a new possibility. He seemed unable to manage without the elixir. A few sips, and the headache vanished instantly. The liquid was not just useful, it was magical. The 100th day of isolation passed. The system announced a new condition. I had gained resistance to weak poisons. To raise my rank, I had to survive eating 1,000 poisonous creatures. The thought sank in, and the hero smiled. From now on, no matter how many poisonous creatures he ate, death could not take him. He had become invulnerable. 1 year had passed. Endless training and loneliness made his head spin, and he started talking to himself and treating his staff like a real sword. A made-up but strong and handsome opponent appeared in his imagination, and the hero fought him. Today, he challenged Roman, his cousin. After winning the imaginary duel, he pressed the stick to the enemy's forehead, said aloud that now he could beat him too, sighed tiredly, and thanked Roman. Yesterday, he had beaten the teacher, imaginary, but still a victory. Just then, the system spoke. He gained the sword control skill. Sword training now slightly improves his stats. He dueled 12 hours a day for 40 years. Raising his rank required 120 years. Confusion hit the hero. He had never heard of sword control, but imaginary fights were the same, and if this was only the beginning, it should get even better. He chose to keep going. 800 years if needed. Nothing will stop him, even if only eternity remains. In his imagination, he pictured stronger, more experienced opponents. The kingdom's legendary heroes, a blade master, Grami with 2 swords, a mighty elf, the mage swordsman Sherba, and the old sword emperor of the Glet Empire near Ashvan. And these were the ones he chose to fight. More than 11,000 years have passed since the game began. For 3,000 of those years, the hero lived in an endless cycle of battles, training, victories, and loneliness. Now, everything will change. I'll start differently now, Kai said. All opponents were defeated. His time had come. Every unit was wiped out. Only he remained. Even the sacred sword yielded to him. Now, he is the strongest swordsman in the world. His sword mastery is absolute. All that was left was to return. He remembered his chest, opened it, and took out the beetles he had been keeping since the start of the journey. One of them restored health and mana equal to the damage taken. It had the highest rank. The hero decided it was time to return, and he was ready. Stepping into the dungeon, he breathed the cold, fresh air that had once frightened him, but now felt like home. His heartbeat was steady. Waving the stick, the first sword that started it all. He knew he would come back here one day, because this was the place of his rebirth. Suddenly, he saw the same monster that had once wounded him. "You are still here," Kai said. It appeared the creature had waited for him for 3,000 years. A thrill ran through the hero. Fighting an opponent he knew nothing about was exciting. It was no longer just a hunt, but a search for the truth. This monster could be the key to the mystery, pointing to a path Kai has not yet seen. During the fight, he analyzed the strikes, landed 2 direct hits, but blocked 2 slowly. The opponent was unconventional, but not flawless. Right then, the system showed Kai's new stats. His age was frozen, and strength, stamina, intelligence, and luck were 0.2 each, but could grow, and he realized every victory raises his level. He looked around. The room was vast, almost gigantic. With each level of the dungeon, there was more space, and the boundaries faded. Inside the chest, almost no beetles remained, but poisonous extra 12 beetles, the guards of this level, were crawling around the room. Kai noticed a strange whirl, a vortex-like current, and wondered whether it would lift him up. But after looking at the new beetles, he realized he would have to eat them, despite how disgusting that was. After moving up a level, he encountered a monster called the Killer Hornet, and a new challenge awaited. Feeling bold, the hero challenged the monster to a fight. The enemy vanished before he could act. While Kai tried to understand what happened, an invisible strike cut off his left arm. He parried invisible attacks with enthusiasm, forcing himself not to give up. And finally, the enemy revealed himself, visible but even more dangerous. He moved in a flash, and Kai was impressed by the speed. The monster's blows were still straightforward, which left the hero a little disappointed. He noticed a curious detail. Before each attack, the monster froze for a moment, as if warning him not to come closer, and its behavior was strange, almost human. The hornet shot its sting at Kai, and the boy suspected something was hidden in it. This was clearly not a normal attack. The monster released a liquid. The hero grew alert. Sure, it could be poison from a distance, so he immediately used the long-range attack technique. It became clear it offered little benefit. He decided to try a different approach. Kai switched his sword to combat mode and charged into battle. After a tense duel, Kai finally defeated the wasp. The system reported the enemy was completely destroyed. A new window appeared before him. The killer hornet was defeated, and the first trial passed. The hero will receive a special ability as a reward. As he absorbed the information, something like a container appeared, and he opened it to find a Flamberg flamethrower, using atmospheric magic that set fire to everything it cut. The item's rank was the highest. Kai was surprised by a sword that could set everything around it on fire, and even though he already had an unbreakable staff, such an artifact was a real treasure. He decided to fry those disgusting beetles and finally eat them properly. It seemed crazy, but useful. When he stepped forward, he saw the whole floor covered in boiling lava. Kai froze. It was a new challenge. Finally, something worth his attention. Only one thing remained: figure out how to cross the lava without fireproof boots. It would not work as is. After thinking it over, he decided to test the hypothesis. If something went wrong, a back eddy was still nearby. He put the speed boots back into the chest. After that, Kai stepped onto the lava. Pain shot through his whole body and he jerked back. It was too painful, so he immediately drank a potion to survive. A system window appeared again, saying you acquired a skill: weak fire resistance. It grants immunity to high temperatures. The requirement is to touch something hot 50 times. To increase the rank, you need 500 touches. Having both time and an elixir, he decided to hold out, get through, and destroy the zone in a single push. He did it. Fire no longer hurt him. He cleared levels 11 to 50, the magma zone. Next were 51, 100, the ice zone, where standing still froze him. Then Manhwa 150, the desert zone full of traps. Deeper, 151, 200 were the underwater zone where he learned to breathe underwater. Levels 201 to 250 were the wind zone with raging blizzards. Finally came the last 213 levels, the light zone that blinded him. The hero, hardened by trials, opened a system window that showed his skills, including partial and complete resistance to heat, cold and dust, absorption of those elements, evasion, identification, trap-making, adaptation to water, underwater breathing, and buoyancy. He sighed deeply, feeling the era of survival was over and it was time to move on. So he wiped the sweat from his brow. Realizing the Thunder's beast was wiping itself with its gloves instead of a towel, he heard drops from somewhere and grew alert. He stopped when he saw there were no stairs down, and he barely had time to think before something happened. He realized this was the final trial of the upper levels, and the battle with the monster was already beginning without warning. The enemy was destroyed instantly. There was more noise than resistance. Only the echo of the monster's defeat remained. His weakness was obvious. Kai immediately realized victory would be easy. Another monster fell. The voice, however, sounded strange. Looking down, he saw a giant fish, thrashing beneath the surface. The beast's eyes gleamed like blades in the dark. He remembered that players were promised special privileges under certain conditions. That was probably the place he needed to descend to. Wondering why, he was already jumping down before he could finish the thought. After the fight, he looked around. It felt unreal. It was his first fight underwater, and he had aced it. On his return, the system spoke. The voice, stuttering. Upper-level tests complete. Thunder Tiger down. Rare condition detected. Special privileges granted. Something was wrong. The voice stuttered. Then chests started falling from the sky. They were trophies from fish monsters. Now they had to choose which one. In one of the chests, he found a sword that seemed to breathe life. Something about it was different. The hero sensed it was not just a weapon, but a future companion. 7,612 years had passed since the game began, and Kai stood there. At level 350, he faced a monster dragon. Majestic, fearsome, and next in line to fight. Smaller than the others, this dragon still seemed dangerous. That only lit a fire inside Kai. His blood boiled. He challenged him to a duel, and the fight began. It ended too quickly. Too quickly. Kai still could not get used to how quickly everything ended. A moment ago, there had been a battle, and now there was only silence. His bleeding stopped. All the wounds healed instantly. It was as if nothing had happened. Recalling the rules of the game, he knew physical attacks were ineffective, so a sword was not an option, and he had to find another way. He wondered what besides physical strength could defeat this dragon, and then something happened. Remembering the magic book he had once found in a chest, he pulled it out and began to read. Opening the book, he was annoyed to find more material than he wanted, but since it was for beginners, he would otherwise have been overwhelmed by the text. He found what he was looking for. The book said that to use magic, you had to make a contract with the book itself. Though it was a book, reading it wasn't necessary because in truth, it was not exactly a book. Under the contract, all knowledge appears automatically in memory. If someone tries to read it, a barrier will activate that can damage memory and the brain's cognitive functions. At worst, it could be fatal. Bitterly, the hero realized that his gift prevents him from forming a contract with a magical book, so he cannot gain magic the usual way, leaving him no other choice. The system suddenly announced a new skill: resistance to magical poisoning, easier decoding of magical books, and prevention of lethal effects while reading. Condition: translate more than 100 types of ancient hieroglyphs. Rank: medium. To upgrade: 500. The hero was especially interested in the resistance to magical poisoning. It had been over 60 years. Sitting among thousands of magical tomes, he finally began to understand the nature of magic a little, and that gave him new hope. Magic required talent. Without it, no contract with a book would work. No amount of training would help. This system had a different rule. Natural talent was not required. Willpower was enough here, and that was wonderful because it meant he could grow stronger. Only a little time remained before the dragon's rebirth. Kai asked for a minute to share a new discovery from medical texts. The body is an endless story. The human body is made of many cells that form tissues and organs. The body can be strengthened and heal very quickly, even without inherent magic, by applying magical energy to the tissues. Turning back to the dragon, he smiled and said, "Sorry, friend, I'll be your punching bag again." The monster attacked. The hero used the power of hatred with a non-magical boost. The dragon unleashed a wave of fire, but Kai intercepted the strike. Now, his weapon worked at the molecular level. The sword had become literal magic, able to cut through matter itself. With a single precise strike of his energy blade, he finished off the dragon. No mercy, no pause. Thanks to the Divine Eye's magic, which tracked every being within a 500-mile radius, he saw two people, and his heart skipped a beat. These were the very ones he'd long wanted to spend his magic on. Deadly crystals had been prepared just for them. He had waited so long for this moment, to look them in the eyes and see his freshly spilled blood reflected. His love. That lasted 500 years. Every day he fell in love again and again, almost drowning in those feelings. Wielding the magic weapon, the hero shouted, "I dedicate this technique only to the one whose gaze was as clear as crystal at twilight and whose golden scales glowed in the dark." His soul longed to live. If suffering is necessary, let it be. The hero will writhe in pain and gasp for air, but he will still challenge him to a fair duel. Everything must follow the rules. He had not even drawn his sword yet. The sword had waited for this meeting for millennia, meant for the fight with the dragon. Whether he wanted to or not, he had to. But suddenly, the dragon began to cry, and Kai was stunned. "I studied magic for 300 years to fight you," the hero said angrily, "and you are crying now, of all times." A system message appeared saying the 8th trial was passed. The golden dragon Fafnir had been killed. He gained a special reward because the enemy surrendered without a fight. Kai grew furious and demanded to know why and who he was. Then the incredible truth came out. The dragon wanted to be his friend. Although it did not look convincing, it seemed unlikely that such a huge creature would follow him. But its skin smelled pleasant, and Kai sighed. "I'd give 10 years for a hide like that." The voice he heard was female, anxious, even oddly soothing. He was probably already losing his mind after 10,000 years alone. He took the risk, pressed the Become Friends button with the dragon, and watched to see what would happen. Then, as if from nowhere, a girl appeared, introduced herself as Fafnir and called him her master. Her eyes shone with happiness at finally meeting him. The hero, confused, noticed that none of his clothes were left and thanked them for the new outfit. Fafnir asked whether they should throw the old clothes away. The hero objected that they were not just junk. Now that they are together, let her know he has an endless storage space. Let him put them there. The girl was surprised and asked why he would put them there if he would never wear them again. He answered maybe, but just in case. Marking the items, he made sure no one would throw them away by accident. Then he suggested the girl go back to the first level to look for something interesting. And a good meal, he added with a smile. Seeing her surprised face, he said, "Don't be so surprised. It's a common idea." Entering the house, he held up a chunk of meat that fell from a thunder cow on the 290th level. She froze with anticipation. Kai showed her the sword, a flaming flamberge. He got it long ago, but it hadn't been useful in battle. Finally, it found a use for roasting meat. After a few smooth moves, a tempting, crispy dish was waiting, ready to be tasted. Fafnir was delighted by the sight of the meat, and eyes shining, asked if she could already devour the masterpiece. Kai smiled and said, of course, the only seasoning was salt, and that it was a special kind. This salt came from seawater between levels 107 and 180, where unique monsters lived. Its taste was unlike any other. He offered the meat, and Fafnir swallowed it so fast she nearly ate his arm. "That's not a steak anymore. Give me my hand back," he shouted. "I still have to cook," the girl mumbled. She found her owner tasty too, chewing with both cheeks and purring contentedly, a masterpiece." Before the meal, he always took a sip of the elixir. Eating with an incredible appetite, he thought the dish itself was nothing special. There was something special about her. For the first time in 10,000 years, everything tasted richer, felt warmer, and seemed more real, as if a piece of her soul, lost in time, had finally come home. An impossible calm came as the anxiety and obsession that had tormented him for centuries melted away in the evening sun. And though he once hungered for blood while standing before the golden dragon, looking at her shy smile, he no longer felt the same. Kai suggested out loud that this might be one of the 4 privileges. Fafnir asked in surprise what he meant. Kai explained that they had both won and both would benefit now. Deep down, he still called himself the worst demon, without doubt, and he could not deny it. "Who do you think I am?" he asked. Fafnir touched his armor silently and replied seriously, "I'll pin you onto your back neatly." He sighed, and now he probably has to set the example as a father and mentor, because she seems ready to follow him into any battle. Kai shouted to the demon, "Surrender now, and I will spare you." He did not want to kill. From now on, there would be no needless deaths. If left unprovoked, he will forgive everyone, from bugs to dragons. No longer the person he was before. A degenerate stood before him, a servant of Marie, the most powerful ruler in this world. Not just an enemy, a symbol of the old era. Even this warrior does not deserve to stay here, not even as ashes on the ground, and has no place in the new world. Kai tossed the meat skewer aside, swung his sword, and delivered a powerful blow. "You talk too much, and it annoys me," the hero grunted wearily. If the enemy had surrendered sooner, a buzz rose all around. Fafnir cried out, thrilled that she had never doubted it. The hero stopped her. "You are too eager to kill everyone." And she said, "I'm just hungry." Kai walked up to the chest and said, "Okay, I'll prepare more meat." Inside, he found the Book of Victories, an artifact that holds the souls of creatures defeated in divine trials. Its owner can summon those beings by forming a contract, and the item is top-ranked. He was surprised and wondered if it had dropped from the boss. The system offered to add Eurymachus's soul to the catalogue. It was a chance. Suddenly, Fafnir pressed the button without permission. Kai said, annoyed, "You could have at least asked." "So that's how creatures are added," he said in surprise. "It turns out you can now summon these beings. This book is a real discovery." He thought he should replay the first level and add it to the master catalogue, and Fafnir shouted that they were going back up to check something. but all he heard in reply was, "I'm hungry." A while later, on the first level, a smiling girl asked what he was doing. Kai explained he was going to summon Yurmahala, whom they had once captured. "That's the one with the big nose," Fafnir recalled. "You killed him back then." The hero muttered angrily. The monster still haunts him after death. Suddenly, two guys appeared in front of them. Kai shouted that it was him, the new god, and told them to look. One of them grew angry and refused, demanding to know who the other man was, and Kay calmly noted that the man still was not listening to him. However, Uramakalu jumped up and gave a sharp salute, saying, "Good morning, sir," like a soldier before a general. He had barely finished speaking when Kai swung a stick into his face, said, "Too slow," and hit him again from above without mercy. "You should have answered right away," the hero snapped. The demon fell to the ground and began apologizing frantically, rolling in the dust. Kai was surprised and asked what was wrong with him. Uramakalu cried that he was just a worthless beetle crawling on the ground. Kai asked if even beetles were cooler than him. Uramakalu said no, he was worse, the worst. At that moment, Fafnir woke, stretched, and sleepily said, "Good morning." Uramakalu, delighted, called her a trash bug and added that he was even worse. Kay jumped up. "What did you do? Now even she calls me a bug?" "I'm a dung beetle too," Fafnir said calmly. The hero clutched his head and shouted that everyone had turned into beetles because of him. As punishment, the demon had to do 50,000 push-ups and obediently fell to the floor and began, "Some time has passed, and the team now heads underground to continue filling the Book of Souls with the defeated creature's souls." "I want to try that thing you found yesterday," Kay added. Uramakalu asked cautiously, "Is that another artifact to boost strength?" "These are the gloves of the divine seal," the hero said. "They let him reduce his power by hand to its limit. If you lower it to a critical level, be on the brink of death, and then win, your stats will increase." Fafnir smiled. "But if you lose, you could die." The demon thought warily that Kay definitely had problems with his head. Many years had passed since the game began. On the 700th underground level, there were no trees or rocks, only a red sky and scorched earth. Fafnir pointed and said, "Something is there." Kai realized it was an area hotter than 200 degrees. A long stay here means certain death. He sighed, wondering if the boss was here, and remembered this was supposed to be the sick phoenix. In the very center of the burning zone sat a bird that barely moved, but when it heard footsteps, it raised its head and looked up, taking in the new faces. Phoenix murmured, "Interesting. No one has shown up here in a long time." Kai asked Fafnir, "What do you think about it?" Until then, Kai had not suspected she loved chicken, though he probably did not mean the food, but something completely different. Kai told the girl she should not eat so much for a lady. She calmly replied that he looked far too tasty. Phoenix watched them in confusion, not understanding the conversation. Kai added that, however you look at it, it was just a huge chicken. The monster flapped its wings angrily and demanded who was calling someone a giant. Kai tried to calm him and said it had been a joke. But when Kai slipped and said the word ingredient, the phoenix's eyes almost flashed, and the bird called the word rude. "Unforgivable! You have shown contempt for the divine bird," Phoenix screamed, ready to tear Kay apart for what he considered a grave insult to a creature of his rank. Fafnir put on armor and announced that she would handle the feathered fiend herself. Looking at Kay, she smiled impatiently, as if she planned not to fight, but to feast. The hero sighed skeptically. She just wants to eat him. At that moment, a system window appeared and announced the start of a trial to overthrow the phoenix. Kai thought he hadn't seen anything like this in a long time. "You are serious, you mean me?" Phoenix said, surprised. Don't count on that. It will not save you. His eyes burned with anger, but his confidence was slowly melting. Proudly, Fafnir recited the names of all her techniques without a single mistake, then looked at Kai and said, Master, prepare the fire. It's time to roast the bird. He had been about to suggest that. Kai thought that if the bird did not need to be killed, it might be worth finding another use. The phoenix muttered under his breath that he was tired of these approaches. I haven't felt my blood boil from a fight in a long time, Kai said, baring his teeth. Time to find out how immortal this bird is. While Kai warmed up, Phoenix shouted for them not to overheat him. Fafnir watched the duel closely, as if studying a new dish on the menu. She paused to wonder how long the demon could go without breathing and how much longer the show would last. It all ended with Kai's final strike. He could hardly believe it, but the phoenix was defeated. The winged legend lay dead. Apparently, the monster just needed to be crushed. The system confirmed its complete destruction. Kai looked back and saw something shiny in the pile of ash. When he lifted the glowing orb, the system immediately reported that it had detected the soul of an immortal phoenix, and Fafnir immediately asked if it should be added to the catalogue. Kai snapped that there was no immortal and that the bird was dead, then, unable to hold back, hit the bird's body again while mumbling under his breath. Fafnir looked at him with big, disapproving eyes. Kai realized he had been found out. His attempt to help ended up awkward. Muttering, he tried to excuse himself, saying she was a lady, and it was not proper to say such things. She sighed and said, You are a bad master. It was worse than any scolding. In response, the hero gently stroked her head, thought he really was a bad dragon dad, and then softly called her home. Meanwhile, Fafnir sank into thought. Her name means dragon, not an ordinary dragon, but a divine one. She had been in this dungeon so long that she had forgotten why she was there. Perhaps someone once tasked her with guarding these levels. But thousands of years passed, and now, for the first time, she wanted to live, not just follow orders. With one powerful swing of his sword, he smashed the wall behind her, and the protective barriers kept her safe. She faced no danger. They once told her that one day someone would come to free her, and when that happened, she followed him. They lived together, grew close, and he no longer seemed so frightening. He turned out to be very kind and an amazing cook. For the first time in a long time, someone cared for her. Her heart filled with joy, and she almost forgot what loneliness felt like. She wiped her cheeks, smiled, and asked for more. Because the breakfast was so tasty, she ate every last bite. Looking at the plate, she realized she was having breakfast for the third time, and it was almost noon. Time to move on. She was upset, but he smiled and showed a packed lunch with her favorite dish, and she brightened right away. They stepped out of the house and found a squad waiting ahead. Jury Macallo greeted them warmly and said he had news. The hero was glad to see them and said he was counting on them. The squad wished him a safe journey, and he ordered dinner and a hot bath to be prepared. Everything had to be ready by evening when he returned. He set out with the girl. Fafnir felt how everyone respected her master, and his praise was her greatest reward. On arrival, the girl immediately began training, practicing her technique, and her strikes became more accurate with each attempt. Victory at last. Crying with joy, she said it had worked with a single strike again and that she had done it all. She liked it so much that she wanted to share it with him, but he seemed not to hear her. Lost in thought, the hero stood still, and when she called to him, he flinched and praised her, again with one strike, well done. At that moment, Fafnir felt strangely alone. Her master seemed close, yet at the same time distant. Passing the balcony, she heard the name Lyle, and looking through the door, saw him leaning on the railing and gazing into the distance. The name felt too special to him. Every time he heard it, it was as if part of his soul left. His eyes grew lonely and pained. The floor creaked under her feet, and he turned to see tears in her eyes. He quietly asked whether she had had a bad dream. She nodded. Smiling, he said he sometimes had the same dreams and led her to bed. Tomorrow, they go to the dungeons. When they lay down, she whispered, "You will always be here, won't you?" And he answered, "Yes, always." She asked again whether he would never leave or betray her. He promised he would never abandon her or lie, and she needed to be sure. She answered quietly, "Yes." Then Kai asked if she had ever lied to him even once. Fafnir assured him it would never happen. The hero hugged her and whispered that he had always told only the truth. He promised they would stay together forever. The vow came from the depths of his soul. Her heart filled with happiness. Gently, she thought about how much she loved her master. He promised again that they would never be separated. Faces of everyone he had once defeated, rescued, or who had stood beside him flashed through his memory. And it all began with that same trip to the capital. To leave the dungeon, he had to finish the cleansing. Fortunately, during the fighting, he stopped time outside and destroyed millions of enemies. Despite being the final boss, a mage saw Kai's stats and surrendered immediately. He didn't even realize who he was facing. He asked if Kai had come with friends and felt someone else was still nearby. They all shouted at once that they wanted to kill this man. The hero stopped them and said he'd handle it himself. Kai wanted to know something. Saying everything was under control, he trusted the gloves with the divine seal would work. The man just laughed and aimed his monsters at him. He was certain Kai did not realize how dangerous his situation was. But the hero didn't even draw his sword, landing a few strikes without wasting effort. The enemy's fingers twisted into knots. Then he screamed and ordered the monsters to attack. Kai unleashed the true art of the sword, and after a single move, no monsters remained. The enemy pressed on and ordered another attack. Kai unleashed a deadly beam and immediately destroyed the remaining monsters. Astroff remarked coldly that such a small fish did not even count as an enemy. It was destroyed instantly. Fafnir happily celebrated the victory. Anxiety surged through the hero as he had to protect Princess Rosemary and might not have the strength if the Emperor's sword appears. Astroff carefully asked if Kai was thinking anything bad, as Fafnir was burying the red enemy in the ground, leaving only his head above ground. In a tent camp, the princess heard cracks and screams outside. A guard burst into the tent and shouted that the enemy was attacking and ordered everyone to prepare. The princess asked her aide who was attacking and was told it was the imperial forces, while a traitor emerged among the guards. The princess ordered them to run, but not even her loyal maid knew where to go. They ran straight into the squad, led by Lord Fracton. Rage burned in her eyes at his betrayal of the kingdom. She could hardly believe her brother had become a traitor. The Lord answered dryly, "If Rosemary marries the Empire's third prince and Gilbert takes the throne, the state will be saved." He believed he had done it for his country. For the princess, it was betrayal. Then a warrior appeared. Arnold, the chief swordsman, apologized for being late and asked to take on the enemy. The warrior swung his sword and challenged the Lord. But his strike, a young warrior stepped in. Arnold was impressed because a worthy opponent stood before him. A warrior named Zignal Gastria set out to prove what he could do. Arnold asked if he was the Empire's new sword. A battle began, as swords flashed like lightning. The girls watched from a distance, amazed that the two were truly equal in strength. And then a snake slithered from the shadows. Arnold froze then brazenly asked whether they really wanted to scare him that way. Exiled shouted at his comrade not to interfere. Anna reminded everyone that protecting the princess was the top priority, and then the worst happened. One guard grabbed the princess. There was nowhere for her to run, and the traitors pulled her in different directions. Enz entrusted her to the Lord, but everything looked grim. Meanwhile, Exiled and Enz moved away from the camp. Exiled couldn't calm down. He hadn't managed to say the most important thing. Anna didn't understand what was happening. Suddenly, heads fell one after another, as if cut by an invisible blade. The enemy turned out to be the weakest ever. He called himself the most pathetic. Kai offered Rosemary his hand, and she stood up and thanked him sincerely. The warriors in black cloaks saw the monsters helping Kai and fled in panic to the forest. The monsters greeted their master happily. Astaroth gave a nod of permission, and it was time to deal with the trash. Grabbing Lord Fracton by the collar, she began his punishment. Kay approved what she did. The princess looked at him in surprise and could not believe he was the same Kay. As a child, Rena Grott, wielder of the Holy Sword, knew him as a weak, naive boy. Calling Arnold and Anna, she saw strange, soft spheres around their bodies. The princess grew anxious. Anna reassured them that everything was fine. Slimes heal all the wounded, including the princess. Kai ordered all the slimes to return to the Book of Victories. Arnold was impressed by Emma's powers. He asked how that was possible. Kai explained that formally it was not even considered a summoning. Fafnir sulked like a child because she wanted praise too. Kai remembered everyone and praised all his monsters. They were not just servants, but had become friends. Arnold suddenly spotted the enemies and sneered, "A pathetic sight." One of the warriors said holding the girl back was no trouble, and Exiled added they had to do everything themselves from the very start. This time, Exiled told them not to interfere, and he will finish the fight himself and kill his opponent. The force of their strikes caused an explosion, sending both warriors flying in opposite directions. Surprised, the princess asked Arnold why Exiled's blows hadn't hit Kay. He paused and replied that the hand wielding the sword was far more experienced than his, since they were separated by a gulf of tens of thousands of years of training. This is why their fight was uneven. Kai had an advantage gained over eternity. Kai realized that Exiled was a talented swordsman, and the title of Imperial Sword was not given to him by accident. Ents burned with anger. Exiled stood devastated, having lost his sword and looking helpless. He seethed with rage, convinced that to save the Empire, he must destroy everything around him. The earth erupted in flames. Cloaked warriors scattered, not sure what Enz was doing. With a single step, Kai crushed the King of Spirits as if putting out an ember. Giorma of Hell bowed, called him the Great Lord, and was glad to have been summoned. Kai called Faf and Astaroth. Staying here no longer made sense. It was time to move on. A warrior begged Kay to join Prince Gilbert, the future king. Arnold replied in a stern voice, "Even though Kai once saved Amelia, mocking the royal family will not be forgiven." Faf and Astaroth immediately defended their master. The princess asked Anna not to intervene. Anna could not understand why they should stop. Rosemary smiled and reassured her that everything was fine. Her dream is to build a new nation where their gift can work together. She is willing to give up her title if necessary. Kai asked if she would really leave the throne. Rosemary confirmed that he is now her first girl of the Empire. He led an army of parasites that amazed the beast people. Even the guild became corrupt. The princess admitted there is no one in the royal court she can trust. Kai seeks no fame or wealth, only the strength to defeat the Imperial Sword. There is no better guardian. She reached out and asked Kai to be her protector. If he agrees, he must kiss her hand and swear an oath. Kai squeezed her hand, Firmly and confidently, Rosemary smiled, counting on him. Astaroth snorted softly, saying he had got himself into trouble again. Kai said that by following the princess, he would find strong opponents. Fafnir agreed, then objected. He must be the one at the girl's side. In any case, Layla will decide. The princess wrote a letter and entrusted it to Arnold. In it, she described Lord Fracht's betrayal and a secret plot with the Empire, suggesting that she would be surprised that her childhood friend, Kai Kun, had single-handedly dealt with all the Imperial soldiers. Kai asked why she was smiling. Rosemary said it was nothing. They sat in a small tavern, and she looked at him thoughtfully. In a letter she wrote that this boy was extremely reliable. Now, they traveled together. If not for him, they would have to ask the holy swordswoman Rena Grot for help. Kai paused to think. The princess confirmed she was still grateful for it and asked for one more thing. Meanwhile, Fafnir and Astaroth slept with a puppy nearby. Kai called for everyone to wake up. Fafnir pulled a sheet over herself and asked what had happened. Kai said they would all explore the city together today. Fafnir laughed, and the dog barked. The princess and Anna came because of the noise. Anna asked what was happening, and Rosemary wished everyone good morning. Fafnir returned the greeting. While the princess brushed her hair, she asked if she could look for cake ingredients with Kai. Fafnir was surprised it was a cake, and then asked whether Rosemary could make something too. Rosemary said she was not yet as good as Kai, but wanted to say thank you. It would be a good opportunity. Fafnir glowed. Kai summoned Nemia from the book to guard the princess while they walked around the city. Nemia agreed obediently. In the wide space where the beastfolk gather, Kai remembered his hunter mother had longed to visit here with him at least once. A sudden noise broke the silence. Astaroth asked what it was. Kai suggested they take a look. Fafnir remembered that Fen the dog had gone missing. Pushing through the crowd, they saw a vendor praising paparot to an aristocrat as the best fruit of the year. The gentleman smiled with dignity. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Did you see that man?" Angry, the aristocrat demanded to know what it was, and the fruits turned out to be rotten. Kai and Astaroth both realized at once that they had ruined those fruits, and the aristocrat began to threaten. He ordered the townspeople to be executed for disrespect or to pay 50 million, and the people were outraged because they could not raise that sum. Kai sighed at the Frankton aristocrats again. Astaroth advised him to intervene. He replied that he had already thought of it. The aristocrat was surprised to find the Guild of the Four Saints here. Getty reluctantly agreed and asked the seller to bring better fruit from now on. Relief rippled through the crowd. Someone said it was good the guild had stepped in. Fafnir kept searching for Fen, calling his name. A stranger approached the boy with the basket and called him an ungrateful wretch. Others added that his father had angered the count. They called him a half-beast, saying that was why he did not smell the rotten fruit, and now no one will buy the fern. The beastman protested that farmers would no longer be able to make a living, and in response, he was told to die. Fruits spilled from his backpack. People started trampling them. He fell and remembered how he and his father had grown the best fruit. It was hard to imagine them becoming a problem. If only I had the hunter's power. Ven appeared suddenly, growling as he protected the boy, and the beast man was stunned that the dog defended the boy as a tattoo on Fen's body glowed. One of the men shouted, asking what kind of dog it was and ordering it crushed, but Kai called to Fen to stop, saying there must be no fire in the town, and everyone turned in surprise. Fafnir cheered when Fen turned up. The dog apologized for running ahead. People were stunned that the dog could speak. One of the attackers of the beast man muttered that tourists should not stick their noses into local affairs. Kai said coldly, "Then take the hit," and kicked his opponent with a sweeping blow. One of the bandits shouted that this was exactly what they had been waiting for and ordered his men to attack. The beast man didn't even have time to blink before everything changed because Kai acted so fast and decisively. The tattooed attacker sat on the ground, froze, and whispered, "It's a monster." Kai placed the healing slime on the beast man's head and told him to thank Fen. The boy thanked Fen sincerely. Kai ordered Astaroth and Fafnir to bring the boy to Rosemary and hide him away. Something rotten was in the city. The stench came from within. Later, the princess baked a cake and shared it with everyone. Fafnir glowed with happiness and the smell was incredible. Anna tasted the cake and it was really delicious. The princess proudly added that she had used the dining hall oven for the first time. When Anna exploded, saying she would not forgive Kay for dragging the princess into danger, Rosemary tried in vain to stop her. Kai told Roz he expected her not to stay silent even if she was a princess. He announced he would gather all the beast folk and hold a council. Everyone was shocked. In a secret place, the Count, the Mayor, and Cider sat at the table. Cider praised the performance with rotten fruit and confirmed the magical illusion worked. The Count replied calmly, no one would suspect they were conspiring. The plan put the Coin Guild up next. The Beastman, who had been eavesdropping, was shocked. Cider declared that they would save the city by crushing the Beastmen uprising. All the beastfolk will be captured, sold into slavery, and the mercenaries will cover their tracks. We just need to pay them one more time. Let's drink to Prince Gilbert. Beelzebub, Kay's subject, and a professional torturer and interrogator, learned of a plot. Their plan was to stir up the bandits to attack, blame the beastfolk, and force them out of the city. It was hard to believe. Anna whispered to the princess that there was no time left to speak to the king. Rosemary said Kai would take care of everything. One beastman grunted that he would not listen to such nonsense and walked away. Another wondered what they should believe now. The third wondered whether it could all be true. The beastman Kai saved remembered his parents already growing weak from worry. No one will believe such horror. Kai gently stroked his head and asked, "What do you want?" The boy paused, clenched his fists, and said firmly that they would not allow the fruits of Parkba to be destroyed. He wants to protect them. This city was ruined by those idiots. The other beastfolk looked at him, not knowing what he was thinking. Someone asked if the Zaba family's fruit had ever spoiled. A boy replied that this was impossible and the fruit was always fresh. Another beastman said that even in the square, everything had seemed suspicious. Someone shouted that this would not be forgiven. The crowd fell silent in thought. Meanwhile, Kesh looked down and said, "Either you win and live, or you lose and die." Kai added that it was not just power, but his family's legacy. And the boy, Shiro, thanked him. But the man stopped him and said no thanks were needed. They must protect their own city. One girl said quietly that most of them were women, children, and farmers who did not know how to fight. And someone asked what they could do in a couple of days. Kai said he would handle the bandits himself, but he could not protect the city forever. If the beast people do not defend the city themselves, it will all be in vain. He will give everything for anyone ready to fight for freedom and the future. Now, it's time to see who stands with him. The princess stared at Kay, puzzled by his plan. Meanwhile, in Silka's cave in the forest, a few figures discussed resurrecting the demon Touty and sending it against Papru. For them, and for Tio, it was nothing. The girl reminded, 100 million is not a small sum. Do everything right. The guys, they answered that soon Papra would be in ruins. Unlike weak demons, they had no right to fail. The third shouted that it was unacceptable to humiliate Lady Neil, who was midsummer. Neil stopped the quarrel decisively. The boy said he was acting for Germa. Using magic, he ordered her escort to vanish. They didn't even get a word out. Neil tried to argue, but the boy said, "You're an important sponsor, so stay alive." She thought, afraid that he could scare people even with his words. The guy ordered her to leave while he was still in a good mood. Offended, Neil ordered the rest of the escort to evacuate to the police bars. A spy sent by Kaim watched everything. Kai noted they had arrived on the scent of a celebration and looked down. Time to check the results of the beast folk's training. Meanwhile, bandits disguised as beast people were already preparing to attack. The oldest bandit let them loot anything in sight. After a while, one of them approached the house and decided to start there. A man charged at a boy and raised his axe, but Shiro reached out his hand. Fen the dog was pleased. Shiro did it. The boy said excitedly that he had done everything just as Keisan taught. A few days ago, after the Beast People meeting, Namiya promised a training to help anyone who wants to get strong and show them how to become a warrior in a few days. Norn explained that time in the training ring would pass 500 times slower. Fafnir did too. She gathered her group and cheerfully said that anyone who wants to cut down enemies should call her teacher. Namiya watched the whole process. First a 500-kilometer run, then 500 push-ups and 500 sit-ups. It was hard, but it was a real school of endurance. The protagonist taught them resistance tactics. The number of bandits didn't matter, he said. There really are more beast people. He showed them the technique and explained that it would work if they used it. Victory is guaranteed. We just need to show strength to the bandits and the whole city. At that time, the mayor and the nobleman were resting. Getty snorted that the mayor had once again picked a beauty for the night. A beast girl stood before him. He demanded. She replied calmly. He showed contempt, not only for the popper fruits, but for the entire race of beast people. A blow rang out. Shiro and Fen rushed to search for the bandits. Shiro shouted that many enemies had already been taken down. Fen confirmed that it would work. They caught the bandits, fought them, and tied them up. Shiro tried his hardest and was glad they would save the city themselves. Astaroth said the bandits were weaker than they had expected. Everyone climbed onto the roof and watched from above. The princess was surprised and said the beast folk had finished quickly. It happened very quickly. She thought the plan was foolish, but maybe that was the point. The main character warned that it was too soon to relax. She asked what he meant, but Kai had already jumped down and called to her to see for herself. People poured out of nearby houses, startled by the late-night noise. It seemed the beast folk had argued with the coin guild. The two sides closed in. The leader of the coin accused the beast folk of teaming up with the bandits, introduced himself as Cider, the sharp sword, and vowed to punish them. Shiro, surprised, said it was a trap and asked if those bandits were theirs. They were actually bandits in disguise. The hero pointed to a pile of bound attackers and glanced toward the money men. Kai asked one of the bandits if the coin guild had really ordered the attack on the city. The bandit confirmed in a trembling voice that the order was to pose as beast folk. One of the townspeople wondered why the bandits would pretend to be werbeasts if it wasn't the coin's plan. The protagonist said the beast people had neutralized the bandits. If people learn the truth, those responsible will be held accountable, and it will be the coin guild. Cider drew his sword and challenged Kai, accusing him of treason. The other used a coin to summon a magical spiked web and a weapon. A cobweb bound Kai's hands. The hero replied calmly that his name was Kai Heinemann. He flung his arms out. The web tore into pieces, and the coin purse fell, unable to withstand the force. Cider shouted in fury, demanding to know what was happening. The other guild members froze in fear. Kai disabled both Cider and Kaber with a single blow. Then he said that he only helps those in need. If someone wants to become a hero, they can help with that. At the same time, elsewhere, Johnson asked whether it really was Kai. The hunter confirmed he was the son of the legendary huntress Maria Heinemann, the same Kai who once had the weakest gift. They ran, remembering the rule that whoever lost the blindfold lost. Hurrying to the princess, the hunter remembered that Kai now serves Rosemary. Johnson wondered how he was connected to the city's chaos. The hunter said he had seen Maria's skill, but it's hard to believe that guy actually beat the parasites. Johnson said Ms. Rose had all the first-hand information. There was no doubt left that Kai was here. A letter from the princess arrived at the Hunters Guild recently, outlining a plot by Count Getty, the mayor, and the Mint against the Beast People, Poppers, and their ties to the aristocracy. If the Hero Guild coin is behind these lies, it seriously threatens the reputation of the entire hunter community. First, detain the organizers of the conspiracy, then find out exactly what happened in the city. Johnson, the head of the investigation, and Augur, an A-class hunter from the Central Guild, talked like this. They ran to the mayor's mansion and saw people from Coin. Augur couldn't believe his eyes. They had brought the mayor a girl who was part beast. He ordered the count and the mayor arrested, then rushed on to find the leaders of the conspiracy. Augur called the mayor loudly and said they needed to talk seriously. Immediately after that, the mayor himself crashed into the wall, literally, and Augur froze, unsure what had happened. Both the mayor and the count lay still on the floor. The girl who had been fighting them asked if he was from the guild Miss Rose had called. He nodded. A relieved sigh escaped her. Time to go to her companions. She asked Augur to look after the two. She pointed to those lying on the ground and disappeared. Augur nodded and followed her gaze. A smile crossed her face. If Augur hadn't arrived, she would already have been getting ready to call Kay's subordinates. Meanwhile, Johnson asked what was happening. Another hunter replied that bandits had indeed attacked the town. Most of them were seized by the Beast People, and Johnson realized with shock that Miss Rose had not lied. It is unclear where the Beast People got such strength and how they mobilized so quickly. Residents said the Coin Guild was indeed part of the conspiracy. Before the hunter could finish speaking, something appeared. Johnson shouted that it was a monster and demanded to know what was happening. The princess stood on the roof with Fafnir, Anna, and Astaroth and muttered that he was doing everything his own way again. Fafnir said someone was coming. Astaroth replied briefly, "All right." Fafnir, the princess, and Anna turned around. It was really him. Johnson apologized and said they had come from the Central Guild at the princess's request, asking them not to pay attention to him and to direct all questions to Miss Rose. Anna didn't understand what he meant. Then came the shocking news. Kai had single-handedly destroyed one of the 4 strongest guilds, and now, since Maneta wanted to become heroes so badly, let them defend the city from a real monster attack. The Coin Guild Knights didn't understand what Kai meant when something terrifying suddenly began to crawl out of the ground. Someone cried out, asking who it was. Monsters surfaced from the depths, many of them. They growled menacingly, as if from another world. The members of Coin were filled with horror as they realized these were the Touty monsters, unable to believe it. The heroes, the 4 guilds, and the army of the Kingdom of Amelia might not be able to defeat them. Cider shouted that we definitely couldn't manage on our own. Kai replied calmly, "Your job as heroes is to defeat monsters, so show your courage." Yet the heroes could not move forward because something was stopping them, like an invisible wall. Kai said one of his subordinates had created a magical barrier around the city. Monsters cannot get inside, so we have a chance to fight them here without risking civilians. One of the Mint workers suddenly denied responsibility. "It's not my fault. Count Getty, the mayor, and Cider are to blame." Zayda shouted that it was all Cobb's plan. Cobb ordered him to be quiet. Furious, Cobber snatched his sword and charged the monster, shouting that he would deal with it alone. Suddenly, an alarm bell rang from the tower, A shout from above warned that a demonic attack was already inside the city. Everyone was ordered to stay home. Johnson and the others stood still, watching events unfold. He couldn't understand why the heroes had removed the seal from the legendary beast in the first place. Maybe it was Kai. Kai Heinemann, it seemed, deliberately moved the fight out of the city to avoid civilian casualties. The princess said, "If this is the real Touty, no heroic power will save us. It will be a catastrophe." She ordered Johnson to protect the residents at any cost. Johnson agreed and joined forces with Augur. Addressing Anna, she said they must urgently contact Arnold and call the royal army from Bas. A voice said, "There is no need for that." Fafnir greeted Gurma Kola warmly and praised his work. Augur asked who they were. Gurma said he had brought important people, Count Getty and the mayor, whom he had just taken down in the middle of the city. The princess suddenly noticed Augur. He hesitated, lowered his eyes, and looked ashamed. Johnson asked if everything was all right. Johnson asked if he had come too, and Gurma Mihol joked that the hunter had fainted as soon as he saw him. Astaroth stepped in, so there was no need to worry. The princess agreed and told him to hide too. Astaroth took offense, but the master said Mrs. Rose could just watch from here. Those who wanted fame and gold now face a real horror, a winged monster with a monkey's head and horns. Cider mustered his courage and shouted to Moneta that it was time to show their bravery. It was late, but he finally understood. Fighting the monster, he rallied the others and said they must not fall. "We can do it," someone shouted. "Moneta is our way. Live. Do not give up." Touty revealed his true form. Cider froze. Even he wasn't ready for that. Live snakes hung from his beard. One lunged at Cider, but Shiro appeared and kicked it while jumping. Cider was shocked. Shiro stood beside him, not to help Manetti, but to stop evil from winning. The protagonist reminded them that these people wanted to sell the beast people into slavery. "Is Shiro sure?" "Absolutely," he replied. "If we leave them to die, we will become like them. Our top priority now is to protect the city." Fen said Shiro had finally made up his mind. Kai agreed and handed the right to fight to the Hunters Guild. He then told Shiro he would watch from above. He added that it was time for them to save their city themselves rather than rely on fake heroes. Someone called for the second round, and the Beast People and Moneta charged into a new attack on the monster. On the roof, Johnson, the princess, Anna, Astaroth, and Fafnir watched them. The princess could hardly believe her eyes, because the Beast People were really fighting Touty. The girl taken to the fair was Sarupa. She shouted it was a battle for survival. Only 4 will reach the main arena. Now, Group D, with 30 fighters, enters the arena. Sarupa said the monsters will no longer appear. All forces focus on the target. A frenzied attack began. At that moment, Kai spotted a man hiding in the nearby bushes. Someone created a glowing sphere directly on the monster's head. A flash appeared there. Touty cried out in surprise, asking what that damn thing was. "Bingo! Power up," Max said. The monster began to radiate even more power. One of the beast men noticed the monster's tail had regrown. Sarupa was surprised, but ordered everyone to stay alert. The snake's tail lashed out and sent everyone scattering in different directions. Seeing it, Shiro shouted to warn Sarup, then jumped and attacked the tail. The strike failed. Everyone from Coin was unharmed. The sword of Emperor Zygnogastria and the summoner Ends were meant to carry out the plan, which is why the Imperial Mage wandered these lands. Shiro could not understand why his attack had no effect. At that moment, Kai appeared in a flash of lightning. He hoisted Ciara onto his shoulder and carried her to safety. Sarupa gratefully thanked Kay for saving her. Kai turned to Namiya and ordered everyone to be evacuated into the magic barrier. The mage sat on Touty's head and saw there was one chance left. The explosion destroyed the monster, leaving only a black puddle. "I am a stranger in this town. I should not have gotten involved in this fight," Kai said. Sword control, second form. Everyone saw that, Kai sheathed his sword. The mage did not know what had happened. Touty seemed paralyzed. Kai said calmly that Touty was already dead. The mage was stunned, and the monster had indeed weakened and collapsed. Immersed in the black liquid, the mage could not understand how the hero had destroyed Tout with a single blow. "Don't count on pity. You're too stupid to deserve it," Kai replied. The mage sat in a puddle and said he was ready to tell everything he knew. The protagonist noticed a sphere in Kai's hand, hidden behind his back. He ordered it to be used if the enemy changed form again. Suddenly the mage leaped up and, with a crazed smile, said he would immediately take the hero's life as his reward. He pulled out the sphere, held it to his chest, and activated it, challenging the creature called Germa. Dark tentacles slid out of the sphere and spread outward. A demonic mask formed on the mage's face, and his teeth grew sharp like a predator's. His eyes went completely white, and his lips curved into a satisfied smile. He was thrilled by the power he had gained. It is unclear whether the main hero can stop her. Kai froze, unsure why the enemy still had not stopped. The mage ordered the monster to attack because time was short. Germa ordered his right hand to explode. Dark balls of magic flew toward Kay, and the mage shouted that the hero had to die now. Even curses and the spirit's words are just a form of magic. If that magic is weak, it is not a threat. Kai calmly asked if this was all the enemy could do. The mage stood, stunned. The true power should have worked, but it failed again. The enraged mage lunged at Kai, shouting he did not understand why his attacks had no effect, and Kai replied calmly that the mage's power was worthless. At that moment, the air was torn by bursts of light and sound. Some used it to hide behind the trees. Kai turned to his assistant Vels, who had just flown in, and told him he would be punished for intervening without permission. Vels complied with the master without objection. Kai ordered them to force the whole truth from the mage. "Then do whatever you want with him. Show him what real hell feels like," the protagonist said. The assistant only nodded. The princess looked at Kai warmly and said she was glad to have him as her guardian. Kai reminded them it was only temporary. Rosemary nodded, clearly understanding. She said that as long as he stays by her side, she will stay by his side. The main character lay down to rest and thought Rosemary was not only reckless, but also said some strange things. Given Rena's situation, he wasn't sure how attached he was to the princess. Rena was dear to him, and so was Rosemary. Maybe those two girls meant much more to him than he wanted to admit. Meanwhile, in the capital of the Kingdom of Amelia, inside Aramgard Castle, in one of the halls, a soft footstep suddenly sounded as a young man in a dark cloak with long, light hair confidently approached the carriage. A girl with long black hair and a flower in it ran up to him smiling, and she was Rena Grott, Kai's childhood friend, who said Rosemary had gone with Kai to bars. Kitsch Steinberg, a master magician and Kay's childhood friend, was shocked by the news. Rena said she learned it all from a letter from Rosemary. Kitsch took the letter, recognized Mrs. Rose's handwriting, and read aloud that Kai was accompanying her. Rena worried for both of them and decided firmly to go to bars. The girl rushed to order a carriage, but Kitsch tried to stop her, knowing the trip could be too dangerous even for her. Kitsch asked whether she really understood what position she was putting herself in if they showed up in bars right now. He was sure they'd get a severe scolding from the teacher, but the girl refused to stop. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the Dark Lord declared his presence in this world was fading. He was certain someone in Papua could destroy him. The young man asked in surprise whether anyone in Papua could kill someone like him. The Lord agreed that it was possible. The target could be finished later. Meanwhile, another man in a pirate bandana appeared and said they had to kill everyone. The ruling lord stood before his gang and assigned tasks to each by name. Ochet must find out who destroyed Germa. Salt speeds up the ruins' activation. Sugar and Pepper head out to destroy Popper. Defeat is unacceptable. A subordinate reported watching until the end, but number 33 never returned. The case did not require special oversight, but he wanted to help Neil, yet there were victims again. Neil, one of the Dark King Ashmedia's closest lieutenants, must stay strong until the end. In her thoughts, she asked him for forgiveness. Standing up, she firmly ordered everyone to keep searching for a victim to activate the ruins. A special, unique soul was needed. A girl begged the king to watch over her from the other side. She will carry out her mission and follow him deeper into the darkness. The divine beings from Babylon's palace have finished surveying the ruins. The demon will enter that world first, then open the gate for Lady Tiamat. One of the evil army's units linked to Pazuzu sat on the throne. A girl in a fluffy outfit urgently demanded activation. The Lord of the Chio faction declared that everyone who dared oppose them would be wiped off the face of the earth. Kai stood by the carriage with Princess Rosemary inside, looking toward the distance where the unknown begins. He said the permit to return to the capital would be ready in about 2 weeks. Until then, he would have to stay in bars. After saying that, he quickly walked away. Clearly, he still had matters related to the fallout from the events in Tetsu. The 2-week delay was actually convenient. He also had business in the town of Hor. The Hunters Guild in Basi is a key stop on the way to the Silk Forest and an ideal place to hunt. Hunters from around the world come to Hor's. There is always plenty of work here, and the guild that matches jobs with hunters is essential. Getting a hunter's license is essential for Kai, who dreams of traveling the world without limits. It will let him earn money quickly. Entering a room full of hunters, he saw some drinking beer, others animatedly discussing something, and others reading the board. Hunters are ranked in 6 tiers, from Rookie VE to the Superhuman S, and promotions come from completing tasks and orders. To move up to S rank, you must pass extra tests, and if a son of Marius Heinemann gets S rank, he will be put under immediate surveillance, which may be excessive. Once registered, he can take tasks by rank directly from the guild board. Kai walked up to the counter and rang the bell. He asked whether he could register here as a hunter, and a girl in a pretty hat came up and offered to help. The registration fee is 10,000 durs. Everything was in order. The main character nodded, understanding everything. Kai began to remember that the money he needed should be somewhere deep in the box of things. The girl asked in surprise whether he had a box of things. Embarrassed, Kai did not have those skills and assumed the girl was probably mistaken. He had completely forgotten it was a rare talent. At last, he handed over the money. She apologized for the misunderstanding and confirmed receiving 10,000 durs. That was reckless. If he draws too much attention, he could get into trouble. The girl pointed at the spherical device and politely asked permission to check Kaya's gift and status. She explained that touching the objects in front of him would bring up the information he needed. Kai realized his status was squarely average, a full 100%. Her words were so loud that everyone nearby heard and immediately turned to him. She apologized for saying the results too loudly. Kai said it was fine and that it was no wonder she was so surprised. One of the hunters shouted for everyone to look at the boy, calling him a real incompetent among them. The girl asked the league hunter to stop and said she would report him to the department head. He brushed her off, saying Mia took things too seriously and there was no reason to defend some merchant. Mia felt ashamed for accidentally revealing someone else's information, but the main character did not worry, because it was better if everyone thought him weak, and that meant fewer problems. So he calmed the girl, since his strongest enemy was himself. In his imagination, he began fighting his own double, jumping, attacking, and making fantastic moves, but could not win. That meant his efforts were not enough. It was probably time to change his approach. Kai thanked Mia for accidentally spreading the information, and then she asked whether he liked being mocked, but he politely asked to continue the registration. The girl checked the status and skill board and saw her strength was only 12, apologized again for being loud, but the status was exactly what Kai wanted. And it was good he was inside a ring with a fake effect. He apologized for forgetting to remove the ring that boosts abilities, took it off, and suggested checking the results again. Kai left the administration building relieved. It had been a lot of hassle just for a simple registration. Mia reminded him this was only the first step, and that the final registration would require a few more visits. She handed him a temporary card and whispered that he should not show the ring in public because it was dangerous. Kai walked through the city. The way home was long, but he had no choice. Strangers suddenly surrounded him. He now understood what the administrator meant. At that moment, Ilsa pushed someone out of the office, saying it was better to see things with one's own eyes. She hurried downstairs and told herself they would get a generous fee for the job. Ilsa saw the young man talking with Mia at the counter. She overheard the hunters saying the boy was the weakest in the world and would achieve nothing, and everyone around her was whispering about it. Two hunters talked about a ring that boosts abilities, and one asked what kind of ring it was, while the other said that if it's real, it would be on par with a national treasure. One of them went to get a ring to serve the boss. Ilsa began following them and saw four heading toward Kai. She finally realized why Jones had ordered them to follow the boy. It was actually to guard him. One of the hunters shouted at Kai, calling him the biggest failure. Then he demanded the ring be handed over. It was a robbery in broad daylight, and inside the Hers Guild. Hagenus felt blind trust was just an extra burden. Mia watched the situation with worry. Ilsa gave a faint smile and could no longer refuse to protect the boy. A crowd pressed in on Kai, and Ilsa rushed forward with a blade in her hand. A B-class hunter and agent, she feared losing him. Kai moved first, and with incredible speed, he tied up all the hunters in moments. Surprise flashed in Ilsa's eyes. In one move, he handled them, and the whole hall fell silent, revealing a completely different level. This was no joke. At that moment, Johnson rushed over and asked if she had seen everything. Ilsa did not want to anger him, but Johnson said that was exactly what the assignment was for. A few days later, in one of Bars's elite houses, a bearded man asked why his subordinates were fleeing like cowards. The beaten men said they attacked as a group, but the boy's ring was too strong. They couldn't withstand it. A servant wiped away the blood and began reading from the sheet. A boy named Kai Heinemann, who has the weakest gift in the world, is linked to an incident in Harburg. Mishiro realized it was the same man Minata couldn't handle. Another subordinate whispered that they could not defeat him. The third added that if he keeps going like that, he will even outdo those hated boars, and looked to the others for agreement. The leader asked if there was a plan. The answer was that Kai often meets a girl from the guild. They are clearly close. Mishiro was pleased, because that was his weak spot. He shouted, however it sounded, they had to beat that loser and raise their card's name. Everyone backed the leader. Meanwhile, the annual carnival began in Barca. Fafnir ran happily through the streets, calling her owner and Mia to follow. Kai warned her to be careful. Fafnir agreed, and Mia just smiled, saying Faf is so energetic and sweet. Mia offered to wipe her mouth, and the other thanked her and shared her food. Mia smiled, touched by the warmth and sincerity. Astaroth glanced at Fafnir and could not see how she could even have an appetite in such a crowd. Kai thought she had really grown attached to them. Kai asked Astaroth if she was here too. Astaroth said she was just checking to see what was interesting. They noticed they were being watched. Astaroth recognized the pursuers. They have had the master in their sights for days, and Kai ordered Shirayuk to track them down and find out their intentions. The girl in white vanished into the crowd, and the rest went on walking. Fafnir tried the treats like a younger sister. Kai remembered when she saw the carnival poster and started to fuss, saying she had to go there. Mia offered to take everyone, which was a big help. Kai hoped Mia would still play with Faf. Mia remembered the church on the edge of town. Then a voice came from the dark, saying, "Hello, Mia Campanella." Startled, she silently mouthed the name and explained that when she talks to Kai, he seems younger. The guild lists him as only 15. In reality, he is 100,000. That lets her simply call him Kai. Mia remembered her home was on the other side and said goodbye. She waved and her cheeks flushed. Astaroth sighed, unnoticed against the sunset. Poor thing. Kai understood nothing. Sten didn't understand what Asta was saying. Meanwhile, Mia walked along the path, humming a tune. The two watched from a distance. All the friends and assistants sat at the same table, drinking tea. Shirai watched quietly. She said it would most likely happen that way. The protagonist paused to think. Rosemary and Anna were frightened, and they had never seen Kai like that. Rosemary asked if these were the same hunters who had been chasing Kai the last few days. He sighed and said that every time they attacked, he had driven them off. Astaroth sipped her tea and said they were persistent. Kai explained he had not killed them to avoid making a scene, but maybe he should have. Anna considered. Sarayuk said these people had recently kidnapped Mia Campanella. She held a headband with ears Mia had bought at the carnival. Kai asked if she had only been watching. Sarayuk was not the type to stay indifferent. He asked what she had done then, and the girl dropped to one knee before him. Sharia grew upset and said it was unnecessary. She will go save them immediately. Kai thanked everyone for their efforts, but decided to handle it himself, recalling the crimes of the Guild of the Four Saints, who were meant to protect, not betray. Rosemary suggested sending the royal army to handle it. Kai refused, admitting he alone was at fault and would fix it himself. Nemasia smiled. The master had said exactly what she expected. Faf needs to help. The princess noticed there was no tea left to serve with the cookies. Bowing to Kai, she said the bandits are enemies of women and that women will not forgive them for it. Nemasia stood up and thanked everyone for their kind words. The program had already started. A maid entered the room and handed Kai leg. Meanwhile, Mia walked down the path, humming a tune, thinking about Kai all day. She regretted causing him so much trouble. Then she suddenly realized she liked seeing him every day. Sitting on a bench under the streetlight, she looked up at the starry sky and wondered if she would ever see Kay again. At that moment, two strangers ran up, grabbed her by the arms and covered her mouth. The criminals tied her up, slung her over a shoulder, and carried her off. Sharayuk saw everything, but could not intervene in time. Mia recognized him when one of them came closer. It was Mr. Ma. The whole gang stood around, and Mia did not understand their intentions. Not long ago, she met him, and now she has become bait to draw him out. She was stunned by rumors of an engagement to Kai, and those scoundrels made it up. Mia remembered joking at registration about a ring that boosts status and suspected it was because of that. The bandits laughed loudly, and from her reaction, it was clear they had hit her in the heart. It was time for torture. Mia had no idea what they planned to do to her. One of them reached out a paw toward her and told her to enjoy her final moments. She begged them not to come near, but they just laughed. Someone ripped her clothes, and the crowd wanted a show. Mishiro shouted that he wanted to see Kai's face when he learned the woman he loved had been hurt. Mia called Kai in her mind. They forced her to cry and scream. She blamed herself for drawing their attention. The blow knocked her unconscious. In her mind, she pleaded with Kay not to come. Tears ran down her face. He suddenly appeared, grabbed the attacker's hand, and squeezed it until it cracked, and the bandit turned, stunned. Mia lay on the floor, certain the worst thing was that he was here. Deep down, she still wanted to see him. Kaya's fury tore the temple roof apart. He tore the bandit's arm off. The crowd froze. Nobody knew when he had arrived. Mishiro ordered them to surround him. Kai covered Mia with a white cloak. She is safe now. Let her rest. This cloak repels all physical and magical attacks. He ran a hand over her cheek, admitting he was at fault. Kai said he had enough time to fight. The bandits had already drawn their swords. They rushed at him from all sides at the same time. Tell everyone Mia Capanella is with us. Proceed to the abandoned church southeast of Barca. Demand. Exchange the hostage for the reinforcement ring. Otherwise, her life is at risk. Kay stood with his sword aimed at Mishiro's back, asked if the man before him was Boss Mahig, and repeated that he should not expect to leave here unharmed. Kai stood holding this girl, wrapped in a cloak, and laughed because the situation had changed. Mishiro showed the ring and boasted about his teleportation power. Wanting Kaya's ring too, Mishiro pressed a knife to the girl's face and demanded she hand it over. Astaroth and Nemesia stood at the door. Kai took off his ring. He said Mishiro will regret it later. Is this deal acceptable? They burst into the hall without warning. Astaroth announced a retreat. Kai agreed. Mishiro was stunned. It was unexpected. Kai gave the signal. Nemesia vanished into thin air. Someone appeared beside Mishiro and snatched the girl. Mishiro didn't even have time to react. Crying out about the treacherous trap, Kai threw him the ring. Here, take this. You who take hostages have no right to talk about meanness. Mishiro stared, and the assistant confirmed it was the same ring. The ring that made worthless Kai so powerful. Mishiro declared he was the strongest in the kingdom. He insulted everyone who relied on gifts. Even Cider seemed more deserving. He called Kay an insolent pup. Now, Cider does not need him. He ordered everyone to torture Kay with all their might. They surrounded the hero. Kai activated the first form, Deathline. Everyone nearby died instantly. Mishiro was left alone, not even seeing the strike. Frozen with horror, he realized he had lost his fingers. Blood gushed from his hand. Kai said he never wore any enhancement artifact from the start. Mishiro begged for help. The hero raised his sword. He was not weak enough to lose to him. It was over. Light flooded the meeting place. Kai summoned Belzet. Belzet answered. The hero ordered him to make these scumbags suffer like hell. Push them to the limit, but keep them alive. Belzet obeyed. Nemesia did too. In the Hunters Guild, Johnson nodded approvingly, and everything fell into place. The map lay torn and nearly destroyed. Mayor Hig was likely to be hanged for all his crimes. Kai asked Nemesis why she had let those scoundrels kidnap Mia. Idiot, she whispered, then asked Kai to take her back to the dorm. He did not object, but said, somewhat surprised, that it might be better if the guild members did it. Astaroth insisted that since it already happened, he must take responsibility and do it himself. Kai agreed. He lifted Mia into his arms and told Astaroth to remove the signs of the slaughter. Nemesia looked around. She asked if that was the master's true power. Astaroth said he had not used even 100th of it. Nemesis added that meant he had no enemies. Astaroth confirmed and said he needed something more important than fights to stay in this world. Kai leaned over to see if she was conscious, said he would take her home now, apologized for scaring her, and asked if she was in pain. Mia said she was fine. She didn't know how to thank him. Kai said it wasn't necessary and that it had all happened because of him. He felt her arms tighten as she grew happier than ever. Mia admitted the dorm was closed, but she'll manage on her own. After helping her to her feet, she looked around, but he suddenly pulled her back to him. They stood like that for a few minutes. Then they walked away and waved quietly to each other. Ilsa called them and said she also had something to talk about. Everyone was a bit surprised. Astaroth said their fate is now tied to Kai. Nemesia confirmed they will not harm those the master wishes to protect. Johnson admitted he did not have time to say thank you, but he asked, "He should help rid the Hunters Guild of corruption. They have stirred up a real hornet's nest." It was scary, but he saved Mia. Johnson, who knew him as the son of an old friend, did not understand what had happened, but his heart seemed the same. She also believed that neither he nor his friends could be evil. Kai made too much fuss for an ordinary boy. He does not seem to realize he is now a royal guard. The princess reminded Anna that Kai was only a temporary guard. Anna herself had asked him to be, and quietly added that Anna had waited for him all night. Anna said she could not leave Race alone to wait for Kai, because he always does things his own way. Rose can't stop worrying. The princess smiled. Anna was just tired. Morning came, and it was time to write a letter. Both settled into their beds, and before falling asleep, the princess thought that Rose trusted Chai completely. Rose asked sharply if he truly blamed the king and her for everything. The princess tried to calm her, but Anna exploded, and her fighting spirit flared. Always thinking of the people, the princess called Anna and told her to tone down her zeal. The argument shifted to politics, and Kai spoke up, suggesting they leave the girl alone. Valf said she wanted cookies. The princess smiled and promised to bake as many as Valf wanted. She asked Kai to tell Anna to buy plain tea. He agreed and realized the princess wanted to give them a chance to reconcile. Anna wandered the city and from a bridge heard a child's voice by a monument calling for his grandmother and saying Aris was there. In this kingdom, people judge virtue by the blessing of the holy war god Aris, and those values were questionable. A dragon's threatening roar tore across the sky. The more Anna tried to be a proud knight, the more doubts ate at her, and she began to see that those virtues might not bring true justice. The beast's voice and movement made her look back. A slave trader displayed his goods. The Earth Kingdom's reality was soaked in discrimination. She had built a knightly image she was proud of and feared losing. In the past, she might not have been able to protect Rose and would have closed her eyes, but now she can think and fight, and if a child ends up in her arms, she must act. The slaver raised his whip. Anna shouted, "Take your hands off the child," and grabbed his wrist. He protested that it was only a demonstration of the goods and that an animal was not a person. Anna shielded the child with her back. The slaver recognized her as the girl from the kingdom that had created this discrimination. She barely held back her anger. Kai stepped out of the crowd and calmly apologized, saying Anna had not yet learned about life, leaving her stunned. The slave trader muttered angrily that they were only getting in the way of his business and did not want any scandals. Kai understood everything. Pulling out a pouch of money, he suggested they get down to business. The pouch held 80,000 orly. The merchant was pleased, but said it was only a deposit. A silver-furred half-beast like this is rare. The full price is 2 million eagles, and he has 30 days. The deposit is non-refundable. Anna grabbed Kay by the collar and accused him of buying someone for money. You're selling people right in front of the kingdom's knight. Kai replied, confused, that he is trying to protect the child, and that is the best option right now. Anna paused briefly and let him go, realizing it was a defense, though an awkward one. Kai said the kingdom's problems could not be solved at once, but at least he thought before acting. Then he used her name and said, "Anno, you did well." She was surprised because it was the first time he had called her that, and she smiled, saying they should shop quickly and return to Rose. Back home, they told the princess everything. In short, the ransom for the child is 2 million eagles. Anna confirmed she had seen everything with her own eyes. The princess supported the ransom idea. Kai asked, surprised, if she was a masochist, since this could cause a scandal or even threaten her life. Anna asked what a masochist was. The princess was already fuming. Kai said he could not take money from the treasury, but needed advice on how to earn that sum in 30 days. The princess said she had an idea. They could sell the family relic, the Ring of Resurrection, since it would not be the people's taxes. But Kai and Anna objected. The princess had another plan. If she reached the final, she would get the prize money without any scandal. At the Sacred Martial Arts tournament, Kai realized he'd walked into her trap and had already been registered as D98. Riding in the carriage to the tournament, Kai read the rules and grumbled because he did not like the fight format. A mistake could cost him the match. The princess said if it failed, she would sell the ring, and Kai reminded her he had already forbidden that. Many people had come to the tournament, and Kai sensed someone's aura as a muscular young man in a t-shirt stood before him and asked whether Kai was strong, reminded him of Namiya, said his name was Zach from Group B31, and Kai showed his code D98, while Zach smiled and said he would see him in the final. Meanwhile, one of the observers admitted she didn't understand anything. The host was surprised that even her observation skills hadn't helped, and the observer objected, "Do not call it surveillance." She watched him closely anyway. The master laughed and said, "It seems Kai Heinemann is on our side. First, we have to cut Kai's Achilles' heel." The girl drew a knife, seeming to understand. Joyfully, she said that sometimes you need money to survive. In the carriage, Kay realized the tournament was his chance, but it felt wrong to be away from the capital so long, and the princess explained Arnold was still dealing with the aftermath, so they could not return while Kay was gone. They were forbidden to return without him as their guard. Kai was surprised. He saved not only them, but many others as well. After she dropped him off, he knew she had outplayed him, but there was no other way to make quick money, so he decided to finish it quietly and quickly. At least he was already registered, and it was time to meet Rose and the others. Suddenly someone shouted, "Hey loser, how did you even get in here?" Another noticed the participant card in Kai's hands and immediately informed the senior instructor. Another student asked if he was taking part too. The senior instructor exploded, called Kai's participation a slap in the face to his school, and demanded that Kai immediately leave the tournament. Kay recognized them, the same group, Shiga, the senior instructor of the Heinemann School, and his students who had despised Kay after learning about his gift. Kai asked if they were here to raise the school's prestige, but he himself had left the Heinemann clan. Their techniques were no longer his path, so they had no right to tell him what to do, and Shiga shouted that his existence was a disgrace to our school. Riku, a student, told the senior instructor there was no point in paying attention to that loser because he would lose shamefully anyway. Other students shouted after Kay to watch their victories and promised they would prove Heinemann School's strength to the world. The senior instructor contemptuously told Kay not to disgrace the school. 2 days later, the first qualifying round of the Sacred Martial Arts tournament began. All participants are placed in groups of 100 people according to the rules. Those groups mostly consisted of newcomers and nameless travelers. The lists had no celebrities. Kai pictured how easily he could beat them all by knocking them down one by one. But that would only add trouble, so it was better not to stand out. Then familiar voices came from behind, and Heinemann's students called him talentless again. One of them said that if we beat the incompetent one, the instructor will praise us. Two girls couldn't even decide who would knock out Kai. As they argued over who would claim all the glory, Kai quietly took off their blindfolds without being seen. At last, they agreed to attack together and noticed the inept one was already walking, carrying their bandages. Surprised, the judge asked if Kai had really gathered them. He silently handed her 3 bandages. Only a minute had passed since the fight began. The judge nodded. That is enough. He moves on. Only now, the 3 students realized they had already been eliminated. Many spectators saw the scene. The tournament organizers were watching closely too. One of the lords asked in surprise who the young man was and what that technique was. Lord Aaron was the tournament organizer and head of the Kaian school. A messenger told him that this boy is the grandson of Elmer Heinemann himself, the master of one of the 2 greatest schools in the kingdom. Aaron remembered Kay. They said he had a gift for mediocrity, but that was impossible. It turns out to be Elm's grandson Kai, though he has changed a lot. His presence here is unexpected. His skill is at an elite level. It turns out incompetence was just a cover to keep other schools from grabbing him. If Kai no longer belongs to the Heinemann school, Lord Aaron can invite him to the Kaian school without interference, and with those skills, he will become a royal card, since Aaron had lost hope in the new generation. But now, everything has changed, and in the finals, they will face a true hidden champion. Students stood with their heads bowed in shame, while the inspector pressed on, unable to understand how such incompetence could pull off the stunt. One student said Kai had used something to steal their headbands. The girls insisted he had cheated, but they refused to allow a check. Outrage grew. One of the boys told the teacher it was a mockery of their efforts and demanded they find the cheater, beat him, and punish the scoundrel. Rick stopped everyone and said he would personally fight Kai in the next round, openly and fairly, to prove to everyone that Kai had cheated. The audience will watch as the school restores its honor together with the exposed rival. The students who had lost their armbands backed him. Now, Heinemann School is split, with the main and side branches fighting for prestige. Riku will become the hero. The senior instructor smiled and put his hand on Rick's shoulder. They were counting on him. Rick agreed proudly. Rising, he announced loudly, "Wait for my triumph." A tankard crashed in the tavern as Ray Geister, a D-class hunter, shouted that Kai Heinemann was the most worthless person in the world. His partner Huck was puzzled about what Mia saw in Kai. Huck was sure he was a much better match for her, but lately they had been together too often. Rai was furious. He was better than Kay at everything, and it still made no difference. They shouted at him, "Go home, go to sleep, stop making a scene here." Rai sprang up and shouted he would kill everyone. But the friend at the table stopped him and said it was enough. Huck started apologizing to everyone, saying Raya just got carried away and he's drunk. He gulped from the mug, but it was empty, and in despair, he longed for any chance when a stranger came, poured a drink, and said, "Drink and cool down." A newcomer to Basu introduced himself as Salt and asked if he could join. Ray noticed that he knows a lot. Salt replied that he had to go to the ancient temple deep in the Vasilk forest. Rai was surprised to hear it was ancient. Rai muttered it was because of that girl. He was only D rank. The temple required at least A class. That would be suicide. A stranger showed Rai a glowing amulet and whispered that with it he would become an S-class hunter. Meanwhile, Fafnir grew restless, shouting that her owner would not play with her, and she became completely bored. The princess objected that Kai is busy with the qualifying rounds right now. Kai apologized to the dragon. She added that they would gladly come to support him. Anna showed the table. Kai passed the second round. If he wins the final of the third stage tomorrow, he will receive a prize of 3 million IGLs. Kai smiled, which was more than they expected. Winning the decisive match would be good. Take the money or deliberately lose and return to bars. Kai approached Fafnir, patted her on the head, and promised he would play with her as soon as he returned. Anna coughed and signaled for him to stay back. The princess noticed that Anna had clearly grown closer to Kai. Anna immediately told Rose, "No, we are not friends." The next day, the Group D final began. Mrs. Odo apologized for the delay. The rules were unchanged. Faint or be thrown out of the arena, and you lose. Big fights are coming. Kai looked around and found no worthy opponent. He still had to be careful because he could accidentally kill someone. Odo added that the participants from Group Sigma had already fought in the main arena. They were the favorites. Now Riku Salvatore takes the stage, the hope of the Heinemann School and a student of Master Elm. What technique will he show? Here is the final contestant. His name is Kai. Everyone has already recognized him. Sigma asked whether the host was dismissive of other participants' gifts. Fly agreed with her. Riku defended the host, saying he was just telling the truth. Kai shouldn't be here at all. Sigma added that this inept person talks more than they fight. Fly laughed. That seemed true. Riku snapped and demanded to know who was talking, promising to prove himself to everyone. The host smiled as the tension rose. The Group D final begins. Kai thought it would be easier to get through if the strong fighters knocked each other out. A contestant charges at him with a sword, shouting for him to stop daydreaming. Kai dodged easily and thought about pretending to be the accidental winner. Before he could recover, another fighter lunged at him with a sword, and Kai, eyes closed, was already celebrating victory, but he knew it would not go smoothly.